Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time visiting my channel, thank you. I'm Nancy, and I am someone who is here to inspire you to live your best life, to share life advice, to answer questions, and just be a safe place for healing and growth. So thank you for coming by. If you like my videos, I hope that you will click to like them. And if you enjoy the content that you see, I hope that you will become a subscriber and follow me on this journey and let me continue to help you through yours. So the topic I want to discuss today is something so dear to my heart, and it has to do with domestic violence. I myself am a survivor of a domestic violent relationship, a marriage that I was in when I was a teenager. And I literally ran away from my abuser. When I say literally, I say literally. I escaped. I kind of planned ahead over time, but didn't know when or if I'd have the moment to get out. And by the grace of God, I was able to literally run away with my brand new newborn son, and we got away. My abuser died, was actually killed in 1995 when our son was 6.5 years old. So there is so much emotion in that experience, and I want to share it, and I choose to share it here because domestic violence is so prevalent in the world. It's happening every day. It's happening every minute. It's not only happening to women, it is happening to men as well. It is happening to our children who are, when I say children who are young adults, teenagers who are in relationships. And I don't know that we will ever see the numbers go down, the statistics go down. But if I can be a beacon of light in sharing some of my story with you, if you are someone who is currently in a domestic violent relationship, abusive relationship, and or if you're someone who has been in one and you are struggling to heal, or not even realizing that you're struggling to heal, but wondering why life is off and why you can't attract or trust or be in a healthy relationship today, then I hope that you will take some time out of your day and listen to this. And I hope that I can shed some light and help you to move a few steps ahead with what I'm going to share. I always talk about how I love quotes, how many quotes that I read literally touch my heart, and then I share them on my Facebook and my Instagram, and I put my spin to it. And I am quite wordy, as you can see here. I tend to have longer videos because I love to talk. Love to hear myself talk too, but that's the Gemini in me. But more importantly, I just have a lot to say about certain subjects. So when I see a quote and it moves me and it resonates, then I want to share my thoughts on it. And so I chose one that is so profound. And I hope that for those of you that either have gone through abuse or are going through abuse now, that it will resonate with you too. And I will read that and then we can move on. It says, "From every wound there is a scar, and every scar tells a story. A story that says, I have survived." My glasses are crooked. "Turn your wounds into wisdom." So let me read that again because I noticed my glasses and it bothers me. "From every wound there is a scar, and every scar tells a story. A story that says, I have survived. Turn your wounds into wisdom." I love that so much that I can't love it enough. The reason is because I am a firm believer, this is my opinion, okay? I'm a firm believer that when we're chosen to go through something traumatic, it is with the purpose of learning through it, living through it, learning through it, and sharing from it. So back when I was in that abusive relationship, I was 18 years old. It started when I was a little bit before 18, like 17, 18 years old. I got pregnant when I was 18 years old. I had my son when I was 19 years old in November of 88. And I ran away from my abuser on February 27th of 1989. The abuse continued even though I left him, but there was still emotional abuse after the escape because he found me. And even though he found me, we weren't together anymore. I was never back living with him or anything like that. But in time, he came around and I saw him and he saw his son, our son. But the emotional abuse and the fear tactics were still happening. And then, unfortunately, his life was taken on September 1st of 1995. He was a young man, and our son was 6.5. So the wound of that experience of abuse left a scar, the scar being something that I'll never forget. I will never... that will always be a part of me. But I don't look at myself as wounded. I look at myself as a survivor, as a strong, empowered woman, as a warrior. And to leave an abuser is literally probably one of the most courageous accomplishments a victim can do. I used to sit and watch, I was addicted to the Oprah Winfrey Show, and she had a lot of people on there that were in abusive relationships, victims of abuse, that either got out or couldn't get out or felt like they could never leave or got out and went back. I get and I understand wholeheartedly all of the different scenarios that can happen here. Fortunately for me, every relationship after the abusive one, the physically abusive one, there has never been more physical abuse. I know in my heart that I could never allow that to happen. And let me say this, I'm not a fighter. I've never had a fight with anyone in my life, nor do I want to. But there is anger still residing in me because I chose to never fight back when I was being abused. And my fear is that I've always had this little piece of fear that if anyone ever tried to lay a hand on me, that snap would happen. And I think I would become like the bionic woman. I don't ever want to find out, but sometimes the mind does some crazy stuff. And when you've gone through some trauma and you're holding on and harboring fear, you just don't know what's going to happen. So again, I hope I never find out. I won't ever find out because I won't manifest that into myself. But my point is, I completely understand all of the different scenarios that women and men go through when they are being abused. And that goes for emotional abuse and physical abuse. And they usually go hand in hand. And usually the pattern is that the emotional abuse starts first and then it turns into physical. And in my case, there was no abuse in the beginning of the relationship. And usually I don't think there is. I don't think they come out the gate abusing. And if they do, I think it'd be a lot easier to leave someone that way because you're like, I mean, God, you would hope that people if they get into a relationship, a man or a woman, and there's signs of abuse right off the bat that you consciously are aware of, that you get the fuck out. That was not the case with my ex-husband. I was 17. First of all, there's a level of immaturity there as well, and just lack of life experience. But if I look back, there weren't really signs that I can consciously remember. He was so sweet, so charming, so over the top loving. We got along great. If there were any signs, it was just some control issues, signs of possessiveness, but it wasn't a ton in the beginning. It really wasn't even a lot in the beginning. It was every once in a while, but then I kind of looked at it like, oh, he's being protective and blah, blah, blah. Because again, the naivete and of being 17 or 18 in a relationship with someone 5 years older than me at the time, it's just an interesting experience. I will say that I loved this man. And love to me today at 50 is very different than being in love was when, in my mind, at 17 and 18. So please take note of that. As you age, I always tell my daughter, every 5 years of my life, I was a completely different person. Every 5 years, even though it took me until 47 years old to learn certain lessons about relationships, I am here to tell you that every single 5 years of my life, I was completely different, which looking back now and knowing what I know now about evolving and energy and spirit and all that, it's pretty freaking impressive. And I'm very proud of myself because the journey has not been easy. But when you realize that you've learned and you realize that you've elevated a little bit higher and a little bit higher, it's the coolest thing in the world. And you just want to keep growing. Personal growth, in my opinion, is the biggest prize of life. You have won the fucking lottery if you have experienced personal growth and truly know that you have. So, this relationship at 17, 18 years old was so charming and loving, and it just quickly escalated, and then I got pregnant. So, at the time of my pregnancy, when I was 18 years old, I was scared. I didn't know what my parents would think. I was really, really scared about what my dad would think. I was just, the whole thing was just very scary. But both of our families wanted us to get married and not have an illegitimate child. So I'll be honest, there's certain things I don't remember. I've put them out of my mind or I just don't remember. But what I do remember is that I never sat there and thought, oh, I want this beautiful wedding and I want to marry this man and I'm madly in love with him. I didn't have that feeling, to be honest. But I knew that I loved him. I knew that I wanted my baby. I've always loved children. Abortion was never a part of an option for me. It was not something I would even have considered. I wanted to be a mom and I wanted this baby. And I loved this man, so I wanted a child that was a product of both of us. During my pregnancy, things got really heated. Abuse started more emotionally first. And the physical abuse in this relationship actually didn't start until pretty much about, I want to say 4 months or so into my pregnancy. Maybe 5 months into my pregnancy, somewhere around there. Can't remember exactly. And I didn't leave because, as with most women, I can't speak for men. I can only speak for women because I've talked to other women who have been abused, and I was in a shelter for abusive women when I ran away. So we had discussions with the other women there. I haven't talked to men about this, so it would be interesting if anyone wants to share their story of a man being abused by a woman. But for a lot of women, we get to a point where we are scared to leave. Scared to leave either out of fear of being chased and found and abused worse, being hurt. Scared to leave because of the threats that our abuser is making on our family, who we love and we don't want involved in our mess. Fear of leaving because I love this person and that's my safety and that's my security. Even though you're being abused, you don't always realize that what you think is safe, what you think is comfort, is the stories of your past, is abuse or some type of life stuff that's programmed in your mind from your past. And so it's causing you to think that you're safe and that you're comfortable and you just can't leave because you'd rather stay in the abusive relationship than to be stuck alone. There's such a fear of being alone. And gosh, I could go on for days, but I don't want to make this too terribly long. So, I understand if you are in a relationship that's abusive, that you feel like you can't leave. It all comes down to self-worth. Honestly, everything about a man or a woman staying in an abusive relationship, feeling like you can't leave, because there's going to be a difference between feeling like you can't leave and wanting to leave, but physically being literally held back, like someone on you 24/7 and you literally physically cannot leave even if you have the balls to go. For me, that was the case for maybe a month or so, not even a month. My ex-husband would not leave me out of his sight because he feared that I was going to leave. So I pulled the reverse psychology and I love you so much and I don't ever want to leave you and I want this to work and we love our son and blah, blah, blah. So I did that in the hope that he would give me some space and leave me alone in the house. And to my blessing, he did. And that was on February 27th of 1989. And that was the day that I left with my son. So I understand all of these things, but for the most part, whatever reason a man or a woman feels they can't leave or fears leaving or chooses to stay because they think it will get better and they can fix their spouse or their partner, I'm going to say this is my opinion because I'm not a doctor, I'm not an expert, but I have experience in this firsthand. I firmly believe it's because of stuff in your past programming, experiences in the environment that you lived, experiences in things you've observed, experiences in other trauma or something from your past that is blocking the reality and making you feel like you can't go or like the best thing for you is to stay. So it's really important to know that because your freedom lies upon you going back into your past and digging down into the dirt, exposing the roots of everything you've been through since you were a baby, acknowledging it, seeking to understand it, working on it either through journaling, through prayer, through meditation, through counseling, through coaching, however you need to do it. There's a lot of different ways. I'm happy to chat one-on-one with you about it if that's something you want to do. But when you are able to work on you, you will find the strength to leave. With that said, thinking back to my whole journey to my escape, I hadn't worked on me. It was literally by the grace of God and me always feeling positive about my life, meaning I knew that abuse and that relationship was not what defined me. I knew it wasn't my life. I knew it was a temporary thing. And I knew that it just wasn't going to be my future. I always knew it in my gut, in my soul, I knew it. I didn't picture a future with my son's dad. I never did. I just knew that I loved him and I knew that I was scared for my life and I knew that I didn't want to be in that situation and I knew that at some point I would be able to leave. I didn't know when it would be. Thinking back now as I'm even sharing it, I never wondered like if I was going to die, if he was actually going to follow all the way through with the threats that he made. I just knew that I lived in daily fear. Fear of what I would say, saying the wrong thing, fear of making a dinner or a drink or cleaning the house wrong. Everything I did risked abuse, physically and or emotionally. So the best way that I knew how to get through my everyday was to be loving, kind, and obedient. And as sad as that sounds, it was what worked, and I wouldn't change a thing. But once I got out of that relationship, and as the years have passed and I've been in other relationships, I have found myself, as I dug through my dirt and plucked out the roots and addressed all of my stuff, I've realized that I had a moment in time where I was angry at myself for not fighting back. And I believe that's the anger that still lives in there a little bit. And I hope it never has to come out. But I feel like I just did what felt safest to me and what I thought would keep the water calm at home. And for the most part, it did. Fortunately for me, I was never hospitalized from my abuse. Bones weren't broken, things like that. The type of abuse I endured was extremely verbal and emotional all the time on the daily basis. But threats were made that really scared me. And the physical abuse, the extent of it was choking me until I passed out, pushing me into walls, making me stand in corners, facing the corner as punishment, making me have sex when I didn't want to have sex, just not beating on me. But what I learned on the evening of February 27th, 1989, when I ran away with my son and I stayed in a shelter for battered women, was that no matter what the level of abuse that you endured, whether it was just verbal attacks, disrespect, whether it was threats, whether it was pushing and shoving, choking, or literally beating on you, it's all abuse. It's all wrong. It is all, I should say, none of it is your fault. None of it is your fault. I remember hearing one time that, well, if you were egging him on, or you were saying, if you wouldn't have said that, you probably wouldn't have, he wouldn't have done it. Those types of things. Like, if you wouldn't have said this, he wouldn't have done that. Or I bet you probably deserve some of it because you probably got mad or this. Let me tell you something. If two people cannot behave and be respectful, no matter what's being said or done, without attempting to put their hands on the other person and without calling each other out their name, they don't belong in a relationship. Okay? So I had a newborn son who, although he wasn't old enough to understand anything that was going on, he was 1,000,000% affected, not only by life after his birth, for the short few months that he lived in the same home as me and his father, but my pregnancy was extremely stressful. Extremely. And if you think that your babies are not affected, your unborn babies in the womb are not affected by abusive relationships, sweetie pie, you are sadly mistaken. So I want to kind of get this cut off, and then we'll do another video another day. But I want to say that if you are being abused, there is hope. You can get out. You truly need to dig deep and find strength. If there are kids in the family, I think that was really my saving grace. I was thinking, okay, this man is abusing me, but now I have a child. And although he wasn't abusing our child, the nail in the coffin for me was one day at the airport. He had a small airplane, so we were at a small little airport, and my son was in his little seat, and he was crying, and his dad went over and just shook the seat, and he was like, "Be quiet, why can't you stop crying?" And although he didn't hurt our son, and I don't honestly think he ever would have, that little boy was the one thing in his life that he cherished and adored and loved. But that, witnessing that from him was literally the ding, 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 time to fucking go. Because it's one thing if I'm getting abused and I allow myself to, but now there's a little innocent life, a baby, our child, and there's no way in hell. It's like this motherly instinct kicks in when it comes to our kids. And I'm like, oh no, I'm out. Like the second I'm able to leave, God, please be with me, I am out the door. And I was. He let me stay home when he went to get his hair cut. And I instantly knew when he said I didn't have to go, I knew I was leaving that day. I'm going to do another video another day about the after the leaving and how I left and all of that. I did go to a shelter for battered women. They are a blessing to have those around, I will say. And what an experience being in one and seeing and hearing the other people's stories. It's fucking life-changing. But I want to leave you with this. No matter what's going on in your relationship, no matter how much you fear leaving and think you can't ever have a life after you leave, and that you're going to be forever scarred, bitter, untrusting, all of that, I guarantee you that does not have to be the case. But the key to it not being the case is in you, okay? In your thoughts, in your heart, in the way that you choose to heal or not, in the way that you deal with what you need to heal. If you do not deal with the things that have been traumatic in your life, you cannot heal. And healing is what sets you free. Healing will set you free. I'm not speaking from opinion here. I'm speaking from fact. I've lived it. I am so far elevated from where I was on February 27th, 1989. I was a kid, but I promise you that these past 30 some years, 31 years, my son will be 31 next month. It has been a mountain to climb with rain, snow, hail, dirt, and challenge for so many of those years to get through my feelings and emotions. But it can be done. There is hope for you. So we will talk more about this very important topic, I promise. I hope that something in me sharing my story gives you hope if you are going through this. And if you have a friend or family member or someone who is going through any type of abuse, please share this with them. Please know that I'm thinking about you. I'm sending love and light, and I'm here for you to help you through this journey, however I can, to be of inspiration and to let you know that self-love will guide the way. So love yourself enough to take that journey of healing and know that you are not alone. So on that note, I love you. You matter. Peace out.